So this is one of my favorite trainings to do with some of my private students. It's understanding buyer beliefs. You ever get on an account and there's been a rep there that's been there for like 6 months or a year, and they're just slamming deals, and you're watching their calls and you're like, what are they doing? And it doesn't really always look that fancy. It's because they've just understood the buyer beliefs of that specific avatar so well that they can really free flow from their script or like a typical framework and understand what's going to motivate those people to actually make a buying decision. And so I'm going to give you examples of what you can do for the avatars that you're on, because everyone's slightly different. Now, buyer beliefs, in my opinion, like let's say you have a good script, right? People shit on scripts, but scripts are great. Like scripts, you can follow a script and get to 10, 15K a month if you're on a decent offer. It's like knowing when to take your shots in between the script. That's going to help you actually probe on pain, find deeper motivators, and I'm going to help you identify how to reframe the perspectives that certain avatars need. Okay, so we'll start with like B2B, just so you can, or like biz op, so you can kind of see how it works in that context, and then we'll do more like B2C. Okay, so I have my notebook here. So first, it's like, what are buyer beliefs? Okay, every avatar, right? First, you got to understand marketing a little bit, right? Is that every offer targets a specific avatar, even within a niche. Okay, if you think fitness, right? Let's take two different fitness creators. One guy comes to mind. His name is Dylan. He's very like no fluff, very about strategy, like very fact based, and he attracts a more established, let's say, person that works out. Like they've been working out already for a while. They have seen results, but they really want to fine tune. Right. Meanwhile, another fitness coach, who might be a little bit younger, is all about like just looking good, feeling good. Maybe it's about working out harder, mindset. And they're maybe going to attract a younger avatar, maybe a 22 to 28-year-old, kid that's like juiced up on testosterone, and that's okay, right? Like when marketing is too broad, it doesn't work. And when it's too specific, you don't get enough leads. So you're kind of casting a decent net there. And so if that's how the marketing works, then we're typically going to get a certain type of avatar, right? Now, it's not just like, moms between 30 and 40 that have kids that want to lose weight. Each avatar also has buying beliefs. Now, the marketing will try and do its job to like shift those beliefs so people come on the calls with more intent. That's not always going to happen. It's part of your job to shift those. It's the job of sales, right, is to shift beliefs. And so let's go into some examples of what those buyer beliefs are going to look like. So really simple, when I sold business coaching, the owner was a little bit woo-woo, so he attracted a little bit more of a woo-woo crowd, right? He was YC or something, so he did have venture capital background. So we'd either get super spiritual people or corporate people that were like, closeted spiritual, like they were all about the woo-woo stuff, but they just didn't talk about it. So those were the people that we would get. Now, that was like their belief set. From a demographic point of view, right, they were making anywhere from, their first 10K a month they're already at, or they were making, 200K a month. Like, so we would either have like newbies coaches or very established coaches that wanted to scale, but we had products for both, right? So the first is like with that avatar, I noticed like they were masters of their craft. So masters of their craft, but they had resistance. So I'm writing this out here. Resistance to like exposure, marketing, being seen as cringe. So those are the buying beliefs that I needed to shift. And a very, very simple way to think about or to like identify that is one of the common things I noticed was a lot of these buyers would come to the call saying, I just want to just do good work. I just, these were people that were like, let's say mindset coaches, for example, just want to do good work so I can like build my business off referrals. And if I could just get, a steady stream of referrals and have some stability, I would be happy, right? Like if you don't shift that perspective early on in the conversation, they're not really going to listen to your pitch, and they're going to give you a think about it objection. Because in their head, they're like, should I invest 10 grand to learn a new lead generation strategy? So a very simple thing that I would do is like, first, I would confirm, right? I would agree, and I would agree in a very specific way. Like, of course, man. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, referrals are a byproduct of doing good business, right? Like, obviously, you're not going to get referrals if you're a shyster, right? So, yeah, of course, referrals are just a byproduct of good business. For you to ensure that you actually have an initial client base so you can over-deliver and drive more referrals consistently, what are you doing right now to grow your initial client base? Well, I'm not doing much, or I'm trying these things. It's like, I agreed. I shifted, I put it aside and helped them see the problem. Okay, man. So is it fair to say if we want this to be a referral heavy engine, we might need to invest in some lead generation efforts to get this thing off the ground so you can actually, build this business off of like exceptional client delivery? Cool. So that aside, what's been the biggest challenge for you, or what's been very much preventing you from testing out and sticking through a lead generation strategy? Very simple, like, challenge question, right? But then all of a sudden, the deeper problem would come up. It's just I have this resistance with social media. I don't want to be this dancing monkey, blah, blah, blah. And now another belief would come up where they equate vanity metrics of social media to income, which is also another false belief. Yeah, I drink beer while I do these things because I'm in Colombia and we're going salsa dancing later. Okay, so that's another belief, right? Is like people equate, again, vanity metrics, views and followers with income. And they equate to do that, you need to just catch attention, and be like exactly what they think, right? More of an influencer than an actual, value thought leader. Okay, so then that would bring me to the next reframe, which was, okay, well, hold on, man. Why is that belief there? That it's either or. Why do you have to either be like sell your soul to TikTok or have no presence? Where does that belief come from? And you would start unraveling it. Usually it's because that's all they know, so it's an exposure issue in which you can start shifting that belief, right? So that's a very simple example for like a biz op or maybe a more B2B-ish style sale. And I share that because you guys can start doing this. I'll write it out. It's like identify three buyer beliefs. And if you've already taken calls for your avatar, they should start like being relevant, right? It's like they're scared to get on camera. Let's say like you sell like lead generation and marketing, right? They're resistant to social media because they're scared to get on camera, right? So that's more of like a mindset or confidence issue, right? Another buyer belief can be, let's say if you sell to corporate guys, right, that my company should pay for training. It's a very common objection for people that sell to a typical mid-tier corporate executive. And a third buying belief here could be, let's see, like, for example, people that are very good at what they do, right, but they really resist social media. It could be like, this type of work is sacred, and I feel, I don't know if, like, I want to put my work out this way, right? So, like, the industry is sacred. It shouldn't be this way. Industry is sacred. Oh, here's another belief. Like, knowledge should be free. So maybe if you're selling to a more broke audience, or like, if you're selling biz op or fitness to a younger audience, that might be something that they're thinking, right? And so these are like the common beliefs. So you'll probably be easily able to find 3 or 5 for your avatar. And then for each of those beliefs is like, what is the reframe that they need to have a productive conversation so they actually buy, right? Because if you don't identify these things early, at the end of the call, you're going to be objection handling, and it's going to be a lot more difficult to get that person over the line because you've already price dropped and your pitch has kind of fallen on deaf ears, even if they're giving you all the things you want to hear. Okay, so for example, the scared to be on camera. When I was coaching a team that sold essentially marketing to artists, that was a huge belief. It's like my work is sacred. I just want like my work to speak for me, and I want my work to like attract eyeballs. I don't see why I need to do marketing, right? And it's funny because people would book these marketing calls, and that's what they would come into, as if you had to convince them to like make more money, right? But if you just like go at their throats and be like, "Yo, do you want to make more money or not?" Like they're not going to embody the behaviors required to make long-lasting changes, right? And so that's a reframe. I would, okay, man. Well, help me understand that. Where does that belief come from? Now, of course, like everyone wants your work to do the talking, but how many other artists are thinking the same way? And if you look down the street, how many other competing shops are in your 5-mile radius? And who does the best? Outside of the people that have been doing this for 30 years and have a client book that you don't because you just don't have the tenure, who else is doing the best? The people that are loudest. It sounds like we're stopping ourselves before even doing it because of some resistance to how we're going to be perceived. Is that fair to say? Can we talk about that? Because if we don't, no, I can give you the best marketing strategies and you're not going to do them. And we're starting to unravel self-doubt, fear of criticism, fear of judgment. Okay? So these are some of the buyer beliefs there. Now, that's kind of more B2C. I said I was going to start with B2B. In the B2B context, right, when you sell to, let's say I used to sell to a lot of coaches. And the thing about coaches is that, unless you're a sales coach like me, the thing about coaches is that it's always a marketing issue. A lot of coaches, if you think about the coaching industry, a lot of like business coaches or spiritual coaches, mindset coaches, whatever it is, they resist sales, right? Some of the coaches that make the most money, right? They learned how to sell. They sold well to their avatar, and they took that and applied it to their marketing, and their marketing like skyrockets. But they learned the skill. Now, a lot of coaches like resist that. It's uncomfortable. Selling themselves for 5 or 10 grand is very uncomfortable, right? Because now there's so much responsibility to deliver on the client. So that's a huge belief that I had to shatter with a lot of the coaches I would sell. They would come on and they're like, yeah, I'm just looking for like a new lead generation issue. Like leads are my problem. Okay, cool. Well, like, let's break that down. Let's get some numbers so I can actually like best give you the solutions that we have here. How big is your audience? Okay, how many, XYZ strategies like do you implement every week? Okay, so how many leads does that bring in? And from the leads that you're bringing in, so if that's like 4 leads per week, that's about 16 leads a month, right? And it's just you running shop. And okay, and what's your overhead? Like $1,500. And what's each client worth to you? 8K? Okay. And so out of those 16, how many are you converting consistently, like ballpark? Okay, you're converting 2. So 2, and then are you getting pay in fulls or payment plans? Let's say 1 pay in full, 1 payment plan. Okay, so you're netting 10K per month cash, and then you're driving a little bit more revenue on the back end. Okay, what does that equate to in terms of monthly revenue? Okay, so you're about 15K. Got it. Do you see the issue here? You had 16 leads that are coming from organic traffic. You're only converting 2 of them. Okay? That's like a what? It's not even a 10% close rate. With your current leads, if we are just able to capture 2 more of those, what would that like change in your business? Well, that would almost double. That would double your revenue without spending a single dollar on ad spend. Okay. So is it maybe that we're not having a marketing issue and that we're just looking for the next shiny object and we're having a sales and conversion problem? Cool. Tell me about that. What about your sales process isn't working? And you're typically going to get a resistance issue. Well, I just don't want to be pushy. Like, when people tell me they want to think about it, I just send them my offer doc. Got it. Can we unravel that? And that, especially with coaches, identity frames are so fun because it's like, well, if that's what you're attracting, well, how do you buy? When you're considering like us, even this conversation, right? Are you someone that like needs to actually do the same thing and needs to think about it, or are you someone that leads by example and is decisive when presented with the facts that you need? Right? And with coaching was super fun because there's a lot of identity that you can. So those are some of the buyer beliefs that you're going to see that you're going to reframe early on in your call. So then when you go into like, let's say you're pre-handling objections, okay, so if the problem here, man, isn't marketing, it's closing, and we've identified there's a resistance to actually being seen as a pushy salesperson instead of like a thought leader. Is it fair to say that maybe we need to rewrite that? Right? But if you really want to be seen as a thought leader, right, that also means you want to be seen and looked up as a person of influence. Does a person of influence struggle with selling? Why not? So is it fair to say there's a bit of a skill gap, but also there's a bit of a mental block? Do you see what it's actually costing you financially? And how does that actually rippling into other areas of your life or other areas of your business? Got it. Okay. So fair to say maybe it's time to change that? Okay, so but what was it that you saw from us that made you feel like we could really help with all of this? And now we're going into pre-handling objections quite smoothly. Okay, so I hope this helps. This is buyer beliefs. It's one of my favorite things to do with my private clients. And we go in, we write these out for 3 to 5 per each that you're going to get on any offer you're on, especially if you're like starting off on one. You're in your first month and you're like, how do I really understand this specific profile? And this is going to shorten your calls. Your calls are going to feel more emotional, and then all the are you okay with that? How does that sit with you? Why are you tolerating that? Those types of questions land because you've extracted the mental model that needs to change very quickly. Hope that helps. See you in the next one.